Good, everyone. I hope you guys having an amazing day. Welcome to another episode of ANZ Salesforce podcast. Today, I have with me a very special guest, Lauren Foster, who is a senior recruitment consultant at Upper Echelon. So, Lauren, thank you very much for coming to my show today.
Hey Vikas, yeah, pleasure to be on the podcast. It's actually really nice to be asked the questions for a change. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Yo, thank you. How was your break? Do you had a good holiday?
Yeah, it was brilliant. Yeah, I got to see family up north, did a bit of a road trip, and it's just been such a crazy year. So it's kind of nice just to recharge and think about what's important. And yeah, good to be back in work though. It's
Oh, yeah.
just crazy though. It's hectic at the moment in the Salesforce market.
Oh yeah, that's exactly what we're going to talk about. So from a recruitment specific. So my first question is, how's your experience as a Salesforce recruiter, given the fact you said it's quite crazy at this moment? From your own experience, is it quite challenging at this stage?
Oh, yeah, where do I start? Well, it's probably best to start explaining where I am at the moment and how I got into it. So, I'm
Oh,
part of a company called Upper Echelon. We're a specialist recruitment agency and we're based in New Zealand. The company was set up a good few years back by a guy called Carl Thomas. And Carl is my mentor. He's a bit of a legend in the Salesforce recruitment industry. I shouldn't say too much because I don't want to give him too much of a big head. But yeah, he's fantastic to work with, really good to learn from, and a good manager. And yeah, so the company was predominantly built up around Salesforce roles in Australia and New Zealand. We do now also specialize in cybersecurity, data, cloud, and marketing automation roles as well. But what I specialize is in the Salesforce area, and I do a little bit of marketing automation every now and again. So it's very niche recruiting in the grand scheme of things. And to be honest, there's not too many recruiters that fully specialize in Salesforce in New Zealand. So yeah, that gives you a bit of a gist of what we do. My Salesforce journey actually started a few years back in the last company I worked at. They were actually Salesforce users. I didn't have much to do with it, but I did use it a fair bit, and I knew the gist of what it was, and I always thought it was a really great product. So yeah, I had a background in sales, team management, and a bit of client management as well. So the transition into recruitment was pretty natural for me. And I'm a helpful kind of person by nature. I really do enjoy coaching and consulting, and yeah, getting into Salesforce has just been an eye opener for me. Really, it's been a very good journey so far.
yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I remember, last year you reached out to me, asking if I'm looking for a change, and based on my experience, as far as getting into the different role, you've been really helpful, and I would personally recommend, going, for any kind of Salesforce roles with Upper Exxon. It's
Oh, that means a lot, actually. That is
I mean,
exactly why I do this job. It really means a lot. That's great.
like,
And you've come so far in a year. I can't believe. I'm so proud of you. It's mad how far you've come. So,
okay.
yeah. And I think I just reached out to you out of the blue as well. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's that's right. And I was not looking for a change, but then when you reached out, I'm like, might as well. But that actually helped. Helped me a lot in my career transition as well. So that's been really great. Okay, now that's the good side of things. Now let's talk about the challenges that what you're facing at this stage in the Salesforce market, given the fact Salesforce is expanding tremendously, right, in New Zealand space market. Yeah, I mean, different
Oh,
investments.
yeah. God, how long have you got? There's plenty of challenges in recruitment in general, let alone the Salesforce market at the moment. I guess the obvious one is the talent shortage. It's mostly due to the borders being closed because of COVID. It has been really tough for a lot of companies, but in a way, I think we're lucky to be working in the IT industry. It's one of the industries that's really thrived. And I actually think good things I hate to say, but I think good things have actually come out of the lockdowns we've had. It's really, really good to see companies, New Zealand companies in particular, adapting and thinking outside the box and becoming stronger from it, changing the way they recruit and changing the way they look at their employees as well. Yeah, so that's a big one. It is a challenge, but there's also a positive there. Um, and also, for me as a recruiter, not all the usual recruitment techniques work at the moment. The market has changed so much, and it's one of those things you have to adapt or you'll just die. And I've had to adapt quite a lot. There's only so much interest you'll get from an advert these days because most people, they're just not actively looking.
Yeah.
And there's a fair bit of shoulder tapping, but that's always been the case. But I feel like I'm doing a lot more than I normally would. And there's a fair bit of word of mouth as well. I often get candidates I've worked with in the past recommend friends or people that want to get into the industry. And that's always lovely, lovely to work with. And yeah, I guess there is a shift in culture, the great resignation. They say it hasn't come to New Zealand yet. You see it in America and you see it in Australia, but I actually think it's already here. If you look at the candidates, well,
Yeah.
the talent out there at the moment, so many people have made a change in the last, 3-4 months
Yeah.
alone. And there kind of isn't much of a talent pool to choose from. So yeah, we're seeing a lot more vacancies being created because of that, and roles being created within the Salesforce sector. So it's yeah, it's offers they can't really resist as well. So you can't blame people.
Yeah.
Yeah, the cycle continues. Yeah.
Yeah,
Just,
that's right. I agree with that. So a bit, since you mentioned the lockdown, right? Lockdown being a kind of a eye opener for most of the companies. So especially from a New Zealand perspective, have you seen companies more flexible, allowing people to work from home? Say, for instance, like I'm based in Palmerston, all right. So my company is in Wellington, so they've been quite flexible with me to work from home. So have you seen such a similar trend? Kind of happening in New Zealand from you?
and flexibly working from home, you mean?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really good thing. It does depend on the role. But yes, there is a rise in companies that are more open to this. I think in a way we're handling it's a new culture shift that I mentioned before, and it's something called the flex culture. Basically, employees really want to have a say in how and where they're working. There's a shift in focus on um, being results driven rather than the hours that are clocked in the office and the time spent. So
Yeah,
if you can show you're actually getting results and you're doing the work that you're meant to be doing, then that's all well and good. But like I said, it just really does depend on the role, and not all companies can do this.
yeah,
Um, yeah, and I do think actually the companies that do offer some flexibility will often win over the candidate when they're going for a job interview. This is a really, really big perk. And yeah, on the flip side of that as well, not everyone can work successfully from home. And I think that's what puts companies off a little bit. But to have the option and the trust to work autonomously in your preferred environment, I think is a really great perk to have. And it's really good to see that the market's evolving and companies are adapting to that. It's at a quicker rate than we're used to, but it's good to see. And I would say to a company thinking about it's definitely worth considering giving that option to your candidates, to your talent. Um, yeah, it does
yeah,
help a lot.
yeah. The reason why I mentioned this, right? Because say, for instance, if a company in Auckland, right? For instance, if they're looking for a great Salesforce talent, you might, um, you might find a talent, say, for instance, sitting in Nelson or in McCargill or somewhere in South Island, right? And so if so it's I understand that sometimes companies might think, oh, okay, it is a bit challenging to get someone from South Island, but sometimes the hybrid arrangement works,
Mm.
so maybe
Yeah, I agree. It's good to have the flexibility. I mean, there's some scenarios where you have to be on site, you have to
Yeah,
be
yeah,
client facing,
yeah,
and every now and again to be face to face in the office is actually really good for the soul. I think to be around your
yeah,
team and actually get to know them. I've spoken to some candidates that have really struggled with the remote thing over lockdown. So it's not for everyone, but it's good to have the option.
yeah. I agree with that. I agree, totally agree with that. Okay, now you do mention about the skill shortage, right, in New Zealand. So, are you getting a lot of demands from overseas candidates? I mean, I do know there are people from everywhere just to send the resume, every different parts of the world. So, New Zealand is not an exception to that either. So, do you often get, I mean, resume from overseas as well?
Yeah, I get a lot actually, a big demand for it. I think the way New Zealand dealt with the pandemic really put us on the world map. The the option for that, where the balance of life over here, it is really desirable. There's been a lot of returning Kiwis as well, which has been really good to see. I think the thing about Kiwis is they'll do their OE, but they're home birds. They'll always come back, right? So they'll
Yeah,
be enticed to go to Australia. They'll be enticed to go to the UK and do the London thing. But I do think a lot of Kiwis know where home is, right? So yeah, and there's other candidates as well. Like I get a lot from India, I get a lot from the Philippines, and
yeah,
just looking for that better quality of life and the,
yeah.
the pay as well, I think is a big factor in all of this. But the skill level I've seen is pretty impressive. Um, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's cool. I'm gonna throw at you a curveball question. If you don't want to answer, that's fine. So is it challenging to place an overseas candidate in New Zealand? Let's say, you know, they got a work permit, right? But they're not physically here because of COVID reason. So do you think that companies, it have you noticed it's like a kind of a showstopper for any companies? Like say, that guy is not there, so we don't want to bother with that person because even though the person is legally entitled to work in New Zealand. I mean, you don't have to answer that if you don't want.
Yeah, I do think it is. It's a really tricky situation at the moment, and I can't really say too much about the immigration side of things. But yeah, it's an ever-changing beast, really. And if you've ever gone onto the immigration website, it's a labyrinth of information, and you never really know. It's constantly changing. So yeah, I think it automatically does. It's quite overwhelming. Um, and yeah, it puts companies off because none of us really know what's going to happen. And also, on top of that, getting in an MIQ spot has been fairly difficult at the moment.
Yeah,
And it's a fair commitment to be doing that if you don't have a job offer to begin with, especially. So yeah, the goalposts do keep changing, and nobody knows for certain what's around the corner. But I have been really chatting to a lot of overseas candidates just to kind of because whether we like it or not, there is a talent shortage that we're always going to need overseas talent. It's always been the way. Um, but yeah, it's a tricky one, but we'll just have to see what the government do.
yeah, I understand that. I understand that. Thank you very much for that. Now, let's talk about Australia a bit, right? Because, the reason why I wanted to talk about Australia, because last year, a couple of recruiters from Australia, they reached out to me saying, hey, we have a bit shortage of skill set. It's pretty dry out there. So would you be keen to consider working for us 100% remote? So have you notice such kind of things happening in New Zealand. And the thing with Australia is that they pay better rates than New Zealand. I mean, I'll be pretty honest about that. So, do you
Mm.
find that kind of thing challenging for New Zealand market? Uh,
Oh,
the,
this has always been the case because, like, we've always had Australian companies hitting on, New Zealand candidates. Like, it's not a big deal. But I think the pool of candidates in New Zealand is a lot smaller than it is in Australia, and so it's kind of like fishing in a very small pond. You're not going to get too much from that, and it's all swings and roundabouts. It does depend on what's offer and what the candidate's really looking for. What I do when I meet with candidates and clients really is try and find the what motivates them to want to change
yeah,
jobs, what they really, really want from your next role, what's important to you. Do you have family, all of those things. Is it flexible working? Is it the money? And it's not always the case. Like I said earlier, not everyone wants to work remotely. And
Yeah, that's right.
yeah, I mean, you just got to really find out what that person wants. And with regards to the Australian recruitment market, it's always been a lot more competitive and aggressive than New Zealand. And I mean, all that I can do here is just really focus on what I can do for New Zealand candidates
Yeah,
and the New Zealand market. And then at the end of the day, it's the candidate's decision on what company and location they want to work with. And yeah, and in regards to the perks as well, the salary rates are not massively different.
oh yeah,
It's not, it just depends on the company, I think.
yeah, that's right. That's totally right. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, it's not like, like 50% difference or something, but I mean, a little bit of difference. But yeah, I mean, like you say, right, it's personal choice. I mean, when they reached out to me, I said no because they wanted me to commute to Australia, and given the MIQ, like you say, right, it's kind of tricky. You can go there, but returning back, right, to your family is kind of get challenging. So, and the last thing you want to get stuck in Australia, so.
Yeah, that would have been a nightmare.
That would
Um,
that would
but
be yeah.
ultimately, you did what was best for your family and yourself, and it aligns with your career goals. And honestly, I think that's the most important decision.
Yeah, absolutely indeed. I agree with you. So we arriving to the last question for today. So do you have any advice for people looking for a Salesforce job in New Zealand market?
My God, loads. um, oh, well, what I would say is, well, I guess it depends how you're talking about it. If it's someone already in New Zealand, um, that
Yeah,
doesn't have
someone.
much
Yeah,
Salesforce experience, I would join a user group, Salesforce user group, your local one. There's a fantastic one here in Wellington, a really good one in Auckland, and one in Christchurch, and they're all run by fabulous people. The Salesforce community in New Zealand is awesome. I love it. Really, really supportive, helpful people that will build you up and push you in the right direction. I would do my own research, see what the market's like at the moment, speak to someone you trust. A recruiter is here to help. I am open to talk to anyone, and so feel free to add me on LinkedIn or just give me a call. Always happy to talk to anyone that's looking to come into the Salesforce ecosystem. Um, if you're lacking in confidence or you don't feel that your CV's up to scratch, that's exactly what we're here for. And I'm happy to help anyone who needs it. It can be a bit of a daunting experience going for an interview or applying for a job or just making that change, So yeah, really have a think about where your career is going, what you want to do. Don't always follow the money is my advice, because that will only get you so far and you'll end up getting the next job that's come in and it'll never make you happy. And most importantly, this is my number one tip, don't ever burn your bridges. It's such a small ecosystem in New Zealand, and your reputation does stick. You will not be hired in future. So really think about how you treat people and what you do. And I guess another side to that, sorry, I got so many tips here.
yeah, go for it.
um, if you're outside of New Zealand and you're looking to come into New Zealand, again, do your research and really have a big think about where you want to be in future. Talk to people that are on the ground in New Zealand. I'm always happy to chat to overseas candidates, like I said, and check out the immigration website. I can't give any immigration advice, but I can point you in the right direction. It's always changing.
Yeah,
It's hard to read the immigration website, but all the information is there. And yeah, if you're new to Salesforce as well, there's some amazing people out there. If you've never, um, if you've never been in it, I know Vikas is looking for someone to mentor. So that would be a good place to start. There's a really good person called Amber Joseph. She's started the
yeah,
Summer of Salesforce. She's doing some amazing things for people that are new to Salesforce. She's got a training school set up. Yeah, she's doing such an amazing job. Um, yeah, I'm often pointing people in her direction. So there's
Yeah,
some good things happening out there. So yeah.
yeah. It's good you mentioned Amber though, because I've seen her videos. She makes amazingly way. I mean, I would say 100 times better than what I make. So, I mean, I watch her videos most of the times. Pretty top notch, I would say. So
Yeah,
yeah,
she's really patient, right?
yeah,
She explains things really well, and I think that's what you need, because if you're new to Salesforce, and I'm on the whole trailblazer path, and gosh, some things just go straight over my head. I just don't understand some things, and
yeah,
she just breaks it down for you, and it's yeah, she's good. So that would be a good place to start. Yeah,
yeah.
just ask questions, see what's out there, and absolutely go to the user groups. They are great.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you on that. Thank you very much for that. That's a fantastic tips. I'm pretty sure people who are listening to us today would have learned so much, from our discussion today. It's been fantastic to have you today, Lauren. Appreciate
Oh,
it.
anytime. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Vikas. Anytime.
Thank
Hopefully,
you.
I can come back on the show next year. See where
Oh
we're
yeah.
at then.
Oh yeah, sure. Perfectly. Why not? Okay. Okie dokie. Thank you so much.
Brilliant.
And
Take
you have a
care.
great evening. Thank you. Bye.
You too. Bye bye.